fellow book lovers. I'm Shay, and welcome back to the channel, Miss Malcolm Hughes. Today, I will not be on camera because I don't feel well, but I really wanted to get this video out so I can update you all on the books that I've read recently. I know I told you all that I would be around less this year because I'm working on a project that I'm super excited about that I'll announce later this year. But like I said, I still want to get things out as frequently as I can. And if we were waiting for me to sit down in front of a camera to record, who knows when this video will come. So recently, I've read mostly romance and a little bit of historical fiction, and you all will see that today. So, the first book that I want to talk about is actually a lead in to the book, and that is 1201 Countdown to Chaos by Bella J. And this is the first chapter or a lead-in chapter that really puts us in the mind of our protagonist of why she's doing what she's doing, how she's found out that the man that she was set to marry is marrying his mistress. And y'all, it was interesting. I didn't love it, but it was definitely one that I think if you're going to read the book, I think you should read this first. And I enjoyed it. I definitely was side-eyeing our protagonist because she did a lot in order to get back at this man, but I appreciated the dedication as well. So I would say that this first chapter, even though I do think it's necessary reading, nothing about it blew me away. It did make me intrigued. I knew I was going to read 1201 regardless. The writing, the character development, the plot, it was good, but none of it was exceptional and blew me away. So I ended up giving this a read when you have time. And so that's where I placed Countdown to Chaos. Now we get into 1201 itself, still by Bella J. And so this is where I really felt like we got to see our protagonist bloom. So here we got to see her humor come out more. I laughed often. But the premise of the book is at the end of the countdown to chaos, we realize that our protagonist has been retrieved from jail by her ex fiance's brother. And so he tells her, listen, you need something else, right? You need a good time. Let me show you what you need. And she automatically goes to X rated. And he's like, that's not what I'm talking about. Come to this party with me. It's New Year's Eve. So she decides to go to this party that's hosted by his cousin. And if you're into spice, I won't spoil it, but just know that spice happens here. And I ended up having to look up some of what was referenced. It was like, huh. So know that spice happens here. One thing I will say is that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed not really knowing what was going to happen. I will say that at some point, the theme of an arch nemesis got a little old because it's like we're beyond arch nemesis. So it's like you're holding on to this. It's seeming like a little petty at this point. So to let that go, I felt like that was like kind of beat a little too much. And even though there was spice here, I wanted it to be spicier. And maybe that's just my preference, but I did enjoy it. I liked seeing it from our characters' points of view. I enjoyed that aspect, but I did want it to go further. Also, one thing I said here is I said people have to think their actions all the way through and then be able to live with the best and worst case scenarios before deciding to do something. And I don't think that always happened here. And I was a little disheartened by that at points, but I think that, it's romance. So the story has to come back full circle at some point. Overall, I really enjoyed it. And I would definitely recommend it to others. I think the writing was good. I think the storytelling was good. I did have a few, like, just preference issues. And those were things, like, just for my preference. Like I said, I wanted more spice. I would have preferred if we didn't go so hard with the arch nemesis thing between the protagonist and the brother. But I think it has a trope of enemies to lovers. But I felt like that's kind of beat over the head a bit. And I said that in the end, this is a story that is kind of really a mess, but we're still rooting for a time in midnight. I did like the background stories of both of their names. I really thought that was a good point by the author. But overall, I enjoyed it. I wasn't mad that I read it. I would recommend it to others. I thought the writing was pretty good. solid. There were really no huge points or like anything that I felt was missing or any just stark errors in that regard. Did it live up to the hype that I was expecting? Not so much, but like I said, generally speaking, I thought it was pretty good. And so I ended up giving this a read when you have time. And now the last part is 1201 The Aftermath. This is really where we get the bridge between where the book ends, which is the epilogue, but what happens between the book ending and the epilogue. So, what occurred in that span of time? And I actually thought it was really nice to see what happened throughout that year. You don't get every single thing because obviously that's just a lot. But I did feel as if she did a really good job of showing us the different occurrences throughout the year, how Time and Midnight's relationship evolved and developed, and how we get to that happy ending. And I really enjoyed this. Like, if this were freestanding and not connected to the book, it would still be good. I thought it was creative in the way she used text messages and social media threads. I really, really enjoyed that. So, this one by itself, I would actually give a read soon if I could, but it's connected to the book. So, I just have it all with Read When You Have Time because I definitely wouldn't recommend reading that without the book. So it all goes there together. Next up, we have a book that unfortunately you can only read if you have the Book Lovers app by Ashley Antoinette. I do wish it was widely available because I think more people should read it. I don't know if everyone has access to the app. You do have to pay a monthly fee. But the book I'm discussing is Takes a Man by Kimberly Brown. And what a good title for this book. So we have two protagonists, Truce and Tyler, and we get to see Truce is in a predicament where she is working a job that she's not proud of, but it opens up with her leaving her man. So you get this early on, but opens up with her like, listen, no, this is not going to work. You have to go. I'm basically a single mother with you here. And he's telling her, like, you're going to be a single mom without me. It's going to be so hard. And she's like, baby, this is already happening. Like, you can go on about your way. So after that, she has to make hard choices in order to provide for her and her two daughters. And so she is working this job that she's not proud of, but she does it to provide for her family. And she does it in a way where it's discreet and people don't know that it's her. And so then her high school sweetheart, who the only reason they didn't work out is because her mother, she decides to stay home and take care of her mother instead of going away to college, which was their plan. She had a full ride. And so first she delayed for a year and then it was another year and then eventually she didn't go back. And so eventually that distance created a strain for them. And in order to be kind, she felt like she would release him from the relationship. And so those are details we get. And he did the thing. He lived their dream without her. He went to college, wanted to be with her. He kind of tried to tell her what was really happening, but she didn't want to listen. And so they went their separate ways. And now he's back home. His career has brought him back home. And lo and behold, he runs into her in a precarious situation. And it's not all smooth sailing, but he's trying to get her back. And that really is what the story is about. Them trying to go on this journey to figure out if it makes sense, if it will work, if the history is something worth acting on. Can it be better this time? Can it be honest and mature? So many things here. I absolutely love this book. I don't want to tell y'all too much because I don't want to give it away. But the way that it was written, the style of communication, the pull on emotions, I thought it was so well done, so vivid in the imagery. I could really imagine what was going on. I could see it. I was emotionally invested. I ate this book up. I read it in a day. Like I started one day and finished the next. Someone was judging me. They was like, I just watched you read for 6 hours straight. Listen, it was worth it. It was so good. all the hype around Kimberly Brown as a romance writer, I immediately understood. I love the fact that even though they're trying to figure out exactly if this has a future, I love that Truce did not play about Taylor. I think I said her name was Truce earlier, but it's definitely Taylor. And I like the spelling of Taylor. Truce is the guy. But Truce was one of those things I was like, that's a good man. So it takes a man. I understood the title. I wish that this was more widely available. I wish that I could buy a physical copy. That's how much I enjoyed it. So if you cannot surmise, I ended up giving this a read now. Absolutely. Read now. I wish that everyone could read it. I advocate for it to be more widely available. If you are a fan of Ashley Antoinette, then I do maybe recommend you get the Book Lovers app. I realized that I had read everything I wanted to read on it, so I unfortunately no longer have it, but I did think it was worth it. There were so many extra stories from the Butterfly series, so if you're a huge fan like I am of that series, it's worth it. She also has another book on there. I read every freaking day, every effing night on there, and so I know there are other stories from other independent artists as well on there, solely exclusively available in the app. So I do think it's worth it if you're considering it. And I definitely recommend that you at least get it for a limited time to read the story. All right, next up, we have Mistletoe Blues by Bella J. I read this around the time of the holidays, and I had just finished 1201 recently, and she sent an email and was like, hey, I have this holiday story. So I was like, why not? And that's how I ended up reading this. But this was a very cute romance. And so this one, we have two characters who work at the mall for a limited time, just for the holiday season. One works at like a perfume counter, the other one is Santa Claus. And she doesn't really know what Santa Claus looks like outside of his costume, the Santa outfit, but there's a connection between them. They're happy to see each other at work. And so one day I think it was Christmas Eve actually. On Christmas Eve, she decides to go out with her sisters who are supposed to be coming into town. And they're gonna have a good time. And she has a good encounter with a bartender. And the bartender, as it turns out, is Santa. And so they end up going on this wild night together, trying to win this competition. And as the night continues on, so does their chemistry. I ended up saying that there's this line she says, like Moana, I was willing to see how far I could go. I thought that was wild and hilarious. I thought it was pretty cute and funny. It was a very cutesy Santa tale. And I liked the theme of like let's explore and have fun, and we get to see them go on this journey and where it takes them. And I like the ending with the possibility of a future. I thought that the characters had good chemistry. I did really like the premise of not knowing and then discovering and then just being really impromptu and going on this night of adventure together around the city. It was very cute. Different moments that evolved and developed. And I like that we didn't get a clear cut resolution at the end, but I really enjoyed it. It was great for the holidays. Did it blow me away? No. Is it my favorite holiday read? No, but it was enjoyable. So I ended up giving this a read when you have time. Next up, we have Be Mine Forever by Kennedy Ryan. It's the third book in the Bennett series. This one focuses on Cam and Joe. Cam is Walsh's best friend. Joe is Walsh's cousin. Joe has been in love with Cam since she met him. It is announced that Cam has also had feelings for Joe, but he's never acted on them because Cam has a lot of trauma in his background. He doesn't want to hurt her. He has always respected her too much, respected his relationship with Cam too much. They've always been very protective of her. She's the Bennett family princess. And so Cam doesn't want to be the one to do the thing that they have always protected her from, which is being hurt and abused and misused by a guy. And so we really get to see them go on this journey. We get to see Cam be sarcastic and brooding in his personality. We get to see that full story. It was so painful at times to really read and learn what happened to Cam. It had been alluded to before in the other books where we kind of knew that it had happened. I actually didn't expect for us to actually get the full story. I thought it was just gonna be alluded to, but she actually wrote it and it was super hard to read. So definitely trigger and trauma warnings here. But it did help to know what caused so much pain for Cam. It was also nice to learn what happened after, how everything occurred with his parent, what with his mother, how he got out, the trajectory. It was nice to get that background story. It was also nice to see Jo stand her ground in this book. It was nice to watch them try to figure out whether or not the history and the relationship that they had could be salvaged. Could it evolve and become something else? So I did enjoy it because I am invested in these characters. But in my opinion, it wasn't always well paced. There was a lot of back and forth. These are some of Kennedy Ryan's earlier works or earliest works this series. So I definitely think that having read some of her more recent works as well, we get to see her evolution and growth as a writer. I didn't love the book, but I did enjoy learning more characters. For me, it was just okay. So I ended up giving this a read when you have time. Also, if you like the picture, I took it. I thought it was so cute. The next book we have is one that honestly, it was the cover that did it for me, that made me want to read it, and that is Say You'll Ride by Takora Monique. And I thought the cover was stunning. It does have a forced proximity trope, which was interesting. And so in this book, we have our main character who is supporting a friend. And while she's supporting a friend trying to attain a new position, she meets this man. Her and this man end up coming back in contact again later. We get to watch them try to see if there's potential or future there. Shiloh is the guy, and I did love Shiloh. He was kind of ridiculous at times. But even in his ridiculousness, I didn't always feel like the writer took him as far as she could. In my notes, what I say a lot is the cover was stunning and that it had great potential, the storyline, but it didn't always connect for me. And I say that because there would be scenes that would occur, we'd go back in time. So we'd hop a little bit, and it wasn't always seamless or didn't always feel like a direct connection. I also feel like I felt like the book needed a developmental edit or another round if it already happened. And I say that because I feel like this again has so much potential. This story of forced proximity, of them trying to make it work, of Shiloh in particular. I felt like he was such a great character, but I felt like he wasn't allowed to always shine. There were a number of times when he would think things in his mind, but he wouldn't actually do them. And so I wanted to see what those actions were. I wanted to actually see those actually pan out. I felt like the book needed room to breathe. It could have been longer. I felt like things were rushed a little bit. I also just feel like, again, the plot could have been well developed. There was so much that could have been done here to really flesh it out. I just think that there was room for expansion with our characters. I loved it. I really liked their premise. I really liked the chemistry. I felt like it had such great potential. I was really invested in the idea early on. I even really liked the concept of forced proximity and where that was going and what was happening. There was multiple kind of storylines happening with people from the past and old histories coming home to kind of like taunt and taint the future. But I didn't feel as if we always really got to see that fleshed out. We really needed to, like I said, to give this story room to breathe. There was so much that could have been done here. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see it. So for me, what was a great concept was so great in execution. And so I ended up giving this story a read when you have time. The last book that I have here to discuss is a historical fiction, the one non romance book I've read recently. I'm reading a lot of other non romance books, but I'll talk about those in a bit. This is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. It is a historical fiction. I've heard so many good things about her writing, so I wanted to check one out. I did listen to this as an audiobook. And so this is a historical fiction about the Great Depression. It is a story about Elsa and her children and the journey that she goes on. It starts off with us learning about Elsa and her family dynamics. And then she gets married and joins another family. And so we get to see how all of this has occurred. We get to see how the pain of her natural family, the one that she was born into, kind of sticks with her, even though she has a new family. And so we get to see that. That's the earlier part of it. We get to learn more about Elsa and just her spirit, who she is and who she isn't, or who she wishes that she was. I feel like those themes stay throughout. And then eventually we get to see Elsa and her children on this journey of survival. They go from one place to another, trying to make it and the challenges they're in. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I said it was a really good historical fiction. With the listen, I was engaged. I was also visiting a friend, and sometimes I would be playing it out loud, and they got really into it as well. It was a really good listen. I also thought that the woman who read this, she did a brilliant job. So good, very engaging. That's one thing I have with audiobooks. I feel like that's hit or miss for me, which is why I never really got into them. I'm trying to give them more of a chance. The reader makes all the difference for me of whether or not I can make it through. And so this person did a phenomenal job. I feel like it's a story of the strength of Elsa, the mother, and her ability to overcome. But it was also interesting that, and I don't want to say what this is, at the moment when she finally finds her voice, what happens. And I also appreciated the fact that, the spirit that she tried to cultivate was, carried on with her children. I also thought it was interesting what happens with the father. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I felt as if we were really on this journey with them, experiencing it. There were some points where I was like, is this dragging on? Most specifically, when we were with them in Texas going through the hardships. But I think overall, it all made sense. Those parts could have been a little shorter because there was something big that happened and I saw it happening like 5 chapters before it happened. So I was like, I don't know if we needed to drag that out, but I get what she was trying to do with build up that suspense. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I did say I want to read one of her books at some point because I think reading it versus listening to it can be a completely different experience. And I was wondering if I would have found this as enjoyable reading it. I think so, truly, but I do want to experience that one day with one of her different works, maybe. Maybe The Women or something else that I've heard great things about. But overall, I really enjoyed this work. It was a great listening experience. And I definitely want to check out more of her writing. This story will stick with you. You're just like, ugh, it was a lot. She did a great job of putting you during that in that period of time, knowing what everyone went through, seeing the hardships that they faced. She did a really, really good job actually of demonstrating the decision points, like all of the things that occurred to lead someone to make the decisions that they did. So I thought it was really good. I actually ended up giving this a read soon. Those are the books that I wanted to discuss. I am reading a number of other books right now. I don't really want to promise any of them, so I'm not going to say what they are, but the one that I do want to share is that the Davenports actually won for the book that or the series that I should finish in February. You could have voted over on the community tab. And so I am going to read that in February. The second place was The Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. So I'm going to read that in March for Women's History Month. I actually think that the Davenports is kind of perfect for February because not only is it a romance, so for Valentine's Day, but it is historical fiction, so perfect for Black History Month as well. And as I've discussed before, you know that it's loosely based on a real family. So those are the books that I will promise that are coming in the future. But many other books are being read. I will discuss them as they come. Please stay tuned. If you haven't, definitely subscribe, like the video, comment below, share with friends. It helps the channel. As I said earlier in the video, I am in the background, off camera, working on a number of things, but the most important thing I'm working on is something that is a childhood dream that I cannot wait to bring to the world and for you all to see. I cannot wait to announce it later this year. So much is going into it. And so I am very excited. I hope that you all are having a great 2025. I hope that you're staying encouraged. If it has not started off as planned, know that it always has the potential to get better. Quarter one of 2024 for me was super hard for a number of reasons, both physically and spiritually, emotionally. It was just a very challenging time, but the rest of 2024 definitely kind of made up for it, even though there were still some challenges, but so many great things happened. And so I just want you all to stay encouraged, stay faithful, and continue to believe in yourself and your dreams. And know that if something isn't going your way today, there is always tomorrow. So continue to push, continue to persevere, and continue to get up each day believing in yourself with the courage and the fortitude to see it all through. That is what I wanted to share. As always, I am Shay. The channel is Miss Malcolm Hughes. And I hope that you all remember to be kind to yourself and others, to have the very best day of your life on purpose. I will see you in the next video.